Why do you think it's going to be a problem coming 2026, 2027 and not 2025?
There's really going to be a divide between the people who got onto AI and used AI and get comfortable with how AI fits into their business, and those who didn't.
From experience, I tried to push thinking more people was a better solution, and I realized that we actually want less people but better people.
TikTok is like crack cocaine for the brain. It's you are just ramming dopamine down.
A lot of people who are listening to this who are not in the digital world, would you say it's too late for them to jump into that? Today we have an awesome guest who's with us, Daniel Priestley. Daniel has a huge plethora of experience in the business world, massive in terms of from a marketing perspective, runs 8 companies, he's an author, and has a complete wisdom of knowledge. He's going to run us through in terms of marketing, AI, and the latest updates running into 2025. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here today in Dubai.
It's awesome. It's so good to be here.
First thing I want to ask you is, coming into 2025, how important of a role do you think AI is going to play in terms of marketing and in terms of marketing going forwards generally?
Okay, so the AI thing is, big picture, AI is a game changer. There's no question. It's like electricity or smartphones, any of those technologies that were massive movements or have been massive movements, social media, for example. But if you think about, say, social media, there's a couple of years there where it just doesn't feel like it's super important. But then there's a tipping point where it's like, if you're not doing it, you know, you're really behind the game. So I think we're still kind of in that zone of it's an important tool, it's a useful tool, you should be using it, but you're not going to get crushed in 2025 for not using it. But 2026, 2027, there's really going to be a divide between the people who got onto AI and used AI and get comfortable with how AI fits into their business, and those who didn't. So we've all got to find a balance. Most people are not finding a good balance at the moment. So for example, I get just every time I post on LinkedIn, I get all these automated AI responses that I can just immediately see their AI generated responses. You know, I see people posting AI generated content and you can just glance at it and you know it's AI generated content. It's not in their voice. So to me, you know, they're trying to use AI and good, you know, I'm glad they are. But they haven't found the right balance with it. And that's kind of where we are right now. Everyone's just figuring out, where does this fit into my business? How do I use it? And that's a good place to be for 2025. That's where you should be benchmarking yourself. You should say, am I just getting myself comfortable with it?
Why do you think it's going to be a problem coming 2026, 2027 and not 2025? Because
right now, this is the worst it's going to be in the rest of our lives. So as bad as it is, all of its flaws right now, this is the worst it will be. And in a year from now, it's going to be twice as good. 2 years from now, it's going to be twice as good as that. So it's doubling every year in how good it is. Things just take time. Things take time. So we think about smartphones as taking over our lives, you know, in the 2010s, but they were launched in 2007 in a big way. We think about internet, you know, kind of being a 2000s and 2010 kind of phenomenon, but it was actually like in the 90s. So there is just an adoption time. There's a momentum that society has built in where things just continue to work longer than they should. You know, even into the 2000s, I was picking up clients using fax broadcasting. Fax broadcasting was a thing. And it kind of worked right through till 2005, 2006. You could fax someone. You could fax them a thing. You could send out physical brochures. You could go to physical meetups and events. So there are things that continue to work longer than they should. You know, they've hit maturity and they just don't disappear overnight. And then there are things that kind of hit that S-curve, which is where AI is now, and they creep up on you. And it's very, very hard to catch up once it really tips and it's away.
Do you think AI can replace marketers entirely?
Here's what's going to happen. You're going to have, previously you would have had an agency with 30 or 40 talented people and then maybe 40 or 50 support people. And now, you know, you've got an agency of 80 or 90 people headcount. AI is going to make 10 really talented people essentially as effective as that 80 or 90 person agency. So it's not so much that AI is roaming around doing stuff on its own. It's just super leveraging those people who are very good at what they do. So a very talented person, you mentioned before I've got 8 different companies. How do I have 8 companies? Because I leverage a lot of tech. Because I've got the right software, because I've got playbooks and I've got media and content and all of that sort of stuff, I'm leveraging technology in a way that's fairly modern, fairly new, and it's pretty easy for me to have, 8 companies. Each company's got 30 to 60 people, and we just kind of we just execute the playbook and away we go. So without that tech, I couldn't do it. With the tech, I can do it. It's going to be the same with AI. So I don't think AI is going to steal anyone's job. I think someone who's very good at using AI will steal a lot of people's jobs as they just become very highly effective.
With AI, what do you think is the best tools people should be using that they maybe haven't heard of other than ChatGPT, which is what everyone uses?
Yeah, I like Plex. So I'm finding that myself doing a lot more searches on Plex rather than Google. So it's plex.it is the URL. And so I will Plex things rather than Google things now. So you say about ChatGPT, I would actually really just urge people just get the paid subscription with ChatGPT and start talking to AI more. Spend time each day in conversation with AI. So you don't need a lot of tools. I mean, there are great tools out there and they do stuff and they help automate stuff and all of that. But when was the last time you asked AI, how do I grow this business? How do I do this thing? What are some of the 5 things I should be doing to make this sort of thing work? Create a job description for me. Write a letter to a competitor and see if they want to sell their business to me. Suggest a strategy for buying 3 or 4 companies in the next 12 months. What would be a good complementary fit with my business? Have those kind of coaching conversations with AI and see what comes back. So kind of get in the rhythm of sense checking your thinking, using it as a sounding board, just sort of being in conversation with AI a lot more. I know that sounds kind of weird, but
I really like that thought process. So one of the things I've done sometimes is I will say, this is a scenario, I would think about doing X, Y, Z, pretend you're this person, what would you say?
Yeah.
To try and see the type of advice or guidance I would get. Do you have examples of maybe prompts that maybe you use or ways you personally do that?
I talk to it like I talk to a person. So my prompt engineering is, I'm thinking of buying a company. Here's who I am and here's what I do. What do you think of this? Write a letter of intent to buy this company, or I'm trying to generate more leads for this kind of company. What are 10 different marketing strategies that might work? So I talk to it very much like a person, and I think the more you can just simply talk to it like it's an intelligent intern. So I like to think of AI like it's a graduate, 22-year-old graduate who's got an MBA and also a master's degree in 15 other topics, and doesn't know much about the world in terms of if you just left an intern sitting at a desk, they're just going to do nothing. But if you give that intern something to do, that graduate something to do, then they spring to it and do a good, reasonable job of it. It's going to need oversight. It's going to need someone to check it in. But if you imagine just simply that you had a 22-year-old graduate who was happily just sitting around your office waiting for things to be delegated to, how would you delegate them? What do you need to explain to them in order to delegate something? Is a fun way to do it.
That's a very interesting thought process, and I think the biggest issue I see from people using AI is just user error in terms of the ability to actually ask the question, which is actually, you mentioned earlier about if you had 80, 90 staff, the 10 people remain. The 10 people remain are people with a really high skill set who know how to get the right prompt to get the right result out of it.
So here's the 3 big distinctions that I've got around AI so far. Distinction number 1 is creating versus consuming. So AI turns people into consumers and it jams stuff down your throat. So AI is really, really good at keeping you watching TikTok videos. It's really good at getting you to listen to the next Spotify track. It's really, really good at another YouTube video You went on YouTube for 10 minutes, but haha, we got you 50 minutes. That was AI. You went onto Amazon to buy one thing, haha, you bought 3 things. That's AI. So it's really, really good at getting you to be a hyper consumer. And it's also really good at being a hyper creator. So the first key distinction is you've got to recognize when is AI twisting my arm to buy more stuff or consume more stuff, and just be aware that this is what's happening. What's happening right now is I'm being influenced by an AI to buy stuff. It's doing its magic. And then you want to try and flip as quick as possible to how do I use AI to be a super creator? So rather than creating 100 units, I can create 500 units. Rather than creating one video, I can create 10 videos. Rather than creating a little mini marketing campaign, I can do a really great annual campaign because of my support from AI. So the first distinction is that distinction. It's really important that you make the distinction. I really see a dystopian future potential where some people are dragged down the consumption rabbit hole and their life becomes terrible because they just overconsume, and some people are hyper creators and they make more money than they've ever dreamed because they're hyper creating. And that really is an AI wedge that it drives. So that's insight number 1. The insight number 2 is what I would call vitality versus functionality. So vitality is life force energy, and functionality is the ability to complete tasks. AI is exceptionally good at functionality, but it has no vitality. So humans are vitality, and AI backfills the functionality. I'll give you an example. If I want to throw a party, I have to decide as a human that I'm going to be responsible for throwing a party. I'm going to invite people. I'm going to make a really great night. I want to bring people together. I want people to connect and gel. I want to get 5 or 6 or 7 really great people together, and we're going to have a really good night together over dinner. So AI is really good for making a list of all the potential restaurants that be a good fit. AI is really good for writing the email, draft an email to invite people. AI is good at creating maybe a syntax of what we're going to, arrival times, and, maybe if we wanted to have questions that we'll discuss over dinner, anything at all, or following up after the dinner. So all the functional elements of putting on a dinner party, AI is great at all of that, provided a human decided in the first place that I want to do this. This is something I'm committed to doing. So it's that life force energy. We breathe things into life. And AI can't breathe anything into life. Only humans can do that. But AI can then backfill all the stuff that you need to do that. So that's distinction number 2. And number 3 is the difference between content and context. So content is all the stuff that ends up on a page or a screen. And context is understanding the bigger picture. So humans are very good at understanding the bigger picture. AI can't do that very well yet. So I'll give you an example. I recently completed an acquisition. I understand the bigger picture of the acquisition. I understand my business, their business, what we're trying to achieve long term, why we're a good strategic fit. Provided I have that overarching context, the AI was able to do all the content. It did all the legal agreements, the letter of intent. It did the onboarding document. It did the press release to announce the acquisition. Did the email to the database to tell them to come across to the new service. So all of the content required, there was probably 50 key documents that AI was doing 80% of. And it could only be useful at those 50 things because I understand the overarching context of what we're trying to achieve. So those are the 3 biggest distinctions that I want people to have going into 2025. So vitality versus functionality, content versus context, and create versus consume.
So AI lacks the ability to have perspective, essentially.
Yeah, it's short term. It's like a dumb intern. It's like a graduate, right? It's sitting there. It's like, I don't know what this business does. But if you ask me to research a market, I'll research the market. I don't know what this business does, but if you ask me to draft a letter of intent, I'll draft it. I don't really understand this business, but if you want me to do a little marketing campaign, I'll do it. If you need me to draft an email, I'll draft an email. So it's that kind of like, that's what I mean by a 22-year-old graduate, smart in some ways, but dumb in other ways.
So then if you take the principles of AI and then say becoming a person of influence in social media, how do you see that quote unquote market changing in terms of maybe using AI to manipulate that world, and even the point we're getting to with like fake creators who aren't even a real person?
I think that something interesting just happened a week ago, which was there was a turning point in the presidential campaign. Now, right now, when we're recording this, we don't know who's won, right? US presidential election.
Hopefully Trump, in my opinion.
Yeah, right? So we don't know who's won. It could go either way. We've seen the campaign. So we're recording this the day before the election. But there was a real turning point. Actually, it was on both sides. Kamala did a podcast, Call Her Daddy, and Trump and Vance did Joe Rogan. 3-hour podcasts, 2-hour podcasts. Why is that so important that they did that? Because people really crave the authenticity. They want to know, what are you like when you're unfiltered? We sit there and we say, okay, I really don't care about sound bites anymore because I know that they can be manipulated. I don't care about those well-edited clips. I know those can be manipulated. I don't care about highly produced will.i.am songs because that can be manipulated. I don't care about speeches from the from the podium, because that can be scripted by someone else and manipulated. What I care about is seeing you sitting down with a podcaster and having a 2 or 3 hour conversation where we just talk about life and liberty and happiness and, you know, all of those sorts of things. And it's very, very hard to fake or filter that. Now, why has that become such an important media? It's because of AI. So because we can create fake stuff, people are now gravitating towards real stuff. There are very few formats that are possible to fake. That are impossible to fake. And the long podcast is now an impossible to fake one. I think the long form podcast is going to become one of the most important formats in the next 5 years. And I think what you'll see is almost every CEO of every major company prioritizing being on a long form podcast.
And is that from a personal branding point of view from their own perspective, or also to try and get across their company's message to maybe shareholders to listen to, and even employees?
Yeah, well, employees definitely. I think there's a certain age of employee that has to have that connection to the founder or to the CEO, and it has to be authentic. It has to be like, I've seen them on a podcast. I know that they're a good fit. There's good chemistry there. I think it's the personal brand. We've now entered an era where personal brand, especially of the leader, was like a weird thing. First, it was weird to have. Like a few weird people had it, like Steve Jobs.
That's the first person I thought of,
yeah. And then like, okay, a few people are doing it. Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, probably still in the weird camp. But then it's like, okay, now I'm seeing Tim Cook on a stage. Okay, it's transferable. I'm seeing some other CEOs going out there and having conversations and being unfiltered. Jamie Dimon especially is now often on podcasts and often on, you know, long form content. So we're starting to see those sorts of things. And it's the moment that there's always a tipping point where things go from being weird to being acceptable to being essential. So we saw this with Franklin Roosevelt. He did the fireside chat with his presidential campaign in the 30s, and that was all about being on radio. And up until that point, presidents had never been on radio. It was all print. So the only way you knew about a presidential campaign was what was written in the newspaper. Then he just does a fireside chat, completely revolutionary, and then all presidential candidates went on radio. And then 1960, Nixon versus JFK, and it was a televised debate, and it was about having television and seeing what they look like and seeing how they perform on that thing. And then fast forward to Obama 2008, it was about interaction on social media and having a social media presence, and that was completely unheard of up until that point, and then it became normalized. And then the big one in 2016 was about personalization and using data. Trump and Brexit were both data-driven campaigns. So then data became the biggest thing from 2016 till now. And then this campaign, the big emerging trend that has come off of the back of this one is the long form 2 to 3 hour podcast.
It's interesting for two reasons. One, I listened to Joe Rogan podcast the other day. I was listening to the Elon Musk Joe Rogan one on the way
this
here.
Morning?
Actually.
Yeah,
I was listening on the way here. And when I was listening to the Joe Rogan Donald Trump one, I was like, this is fucking gold.
Yeah.
Like, if you want Trump to do well, and you see how many views and how much watch time it has, what I think is also wild is how people can see how these platforms are being manipulated. So, for example, I clocked on it straight away. I think the day after the Donald Trump Joe Rogan podcast came up, I searched on YouTube to watch it. It's like clip. It's not there. The one that's got like 40 million views, it's 3 hours long. I had to go onto his channel to go and find it because Google had like hidden it, so it wasn't showing up.
Wild, isn't it?
This is one of the biggest companies in the world, and this is where you suddenly realise the game is rigged in a lot of degrees and how much manipulation is happening, which is why I think the beauty of podcasts and the open forum for talk is beautiful, because it's something that is very rare now.
It also does this thing to our brains. So there's this professor, Robin Dunbar, and he has studied how people bond and how they form deeper relationships. And he uses this idea that you start off as a stranger, you then enter a different circle of an acquaintance, you then enter a different circle of being a friend, a close friend, a best friend, like family. So you end up going through these circles, these concentric circles that our brain has different storage points for. And essentially, the person who is a friend or an acquaintance has clocked up 7 hours with you in the last 90 days, something like that. And if you've clocked up 7 hours with someone, especially if they've been sort of like conversational and positive, then you know their name, you know their face, you know what they're about. Now, the long-form podcast is essentially like when someone's listening to a Joe Rogan, Donald Trump, they're actually becoming friends with Joe Rogan and Donald Trump. So as far as the human brain knows, it's like, oh, these are my new friends. I'm actually adopting them into a new circle of influence for me. Now, that only happens, according to the research, through a process of spending time together. You can't do it through short form. You can't do it through ads. It's different. So like quick little ads don't do it. Little social media posts don't do it. It's long form content that makes you deeply connected to someone.
With that being said, do you think the era of paid advertising on social media platforms is coming to an end, or is going to have a lot of challenges maybe in the next few years?
Google did some research, and I forget, I'll have to look it up, but if you search Google messy middle, and I think it's how people buy in 2024 or something like that, but it's basically they identify this concept called the messy middle. So we used to think of a buying journey as top of funnel, mid funnel, and bottom of funnel. And I hate the word funnel because like humans are humans and we don't like to be funneled towards things, but you get the concept. Top of funnel is awareness, and then trust building, and then monetization, sales, conversion, right? So it's kind of like awareness, trust, conversion type, top of funnel, middle funnel, bottom of funnel. And Google basically said there was this school of thought for a long time that you just moved people through that funnel. And then they actually went to see if it was still working and still happening, and they said it doesn't work anymore. So what happens is we have a top of funnel experience, which is typically an ad. We discover something. Then we enter what Google calls the messy middle, and this is where we just go on a random journey. And then once we've done a bunch of random stuff that's totally unpredictable, we end up at some point buying something, and it's very, very hard to track a straight line to it. So what that might look like is I might see your ad on Instagram and you're directly talking about what you do and how you do it and all that sort of stuff. I might just clock who you are and see your face and see a little bit about you. I might follow your Instagram, but I might not respond and I might not do anything for weeks. And then I notice that you're doing a long podcast. I'll listen to the podcast. Now I'm like on a different platform. I'm on Spotify and I'm listening to a long podcast. Then I'm like, oh, okay, I like this guy. So I might see if you're on YouTube. So I kind of pounce across over here and now I'm watching some YouTube. Because I've done that, I might see 10 short videos that pop up into my feed. I might opt in for a newsletter subscription, get a few emails, and then at some point I go, oh, I'm ready to go. So it's extremely hard for your ad to push me to a landing page that I then respond to, that I then buy from. Those like linear steps, people aren't responding like that anymore. So they go boom, all over the place, and then at some future point. So advertising still actually works, but it only works if there's kind of almost a big spider web of stuff in the middle.
I'm so glad you said that, because that's exactly how I work in my head and with my business. And I'll give it a good example of this. Have you heard of a software tracking system called Hyros?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we use Hyros, and for example, we had a lady who signed up the other day for basically us having scaled her online fitness business. She opted in May, and I could see like literally where she'd bounced around across everything. And when you start to see the journey through that, it's insane. It's like how many different touch points people have, from YouTube videos to podcasts, to then back into like another ad, and they just do full circle almost.
So I mentioned the 7-hour rule. There's another rule called the 11 interaction rule, and there's another rule called the 4 platform rule, right? I've combined these to call it the 7-11-4 ecosystem. So the 7-11-4 ecosystem, imagine that whole messy middle, we call that the 7-11-4 journey. So an ad triggers you to be aware of something, and then you just go through this random 7-11-4 forest of things, and then at some point you pop out the other side to buy something. Now the businesses that are doing really, really well at the moment, they're the ones that have invested in the 7-11-4 layer, that 7-11-4 garden of things to do. So 7 hours could be 7 1-hour podcast episodes. So that's kind of like the minimum amount of stuff you need out there. 11 interactions could be some posts, it could be some newsletters, it could be like LinkedIn articles that you've written, could be like really good. An interaction is like a solid, memorable interaction. It's not like a quick little 1-minuter that you'll forget. It's like an actual, oh, that was valuable, that was good. It actually really, you clock it. You go, that was valuable. And then 4 platforms is connecting with you on LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, right? Now, essentially, the companies that are doing really, really well going forward, if I said, show me your 7-11-4, they will go, oh, well, here's my 7 hours worth of stuff on YouTube and Spotify. Here's my 11 different cool things that people can check out. And here's my 4 different platforms you can connect with me on. And if that's super, super clear, then you've got that part of the journey just mapped out, available. Think of it as like a random playground or a garden, not a funnel. It's like people are just going to bounce around, do what they want to do in the playground, and then when they're ready, then they'll buy.
Do you think paid ads are still one of the best gateways to get people into the garden?
Yeah. But you have to change your expectations with ads. So you have to have an expectation. I hate to say it, and it sucks as a marketer, but you have to have an expectation that a bunch of people are going to hear about you in May because you ran an ad. Then they're going to bounce around the playground for months, and then they're going to spit out in November as a client. And it's going to be very hard to track.
Yeah, that's one of the things. As soon as we start tracking our data at a higher level, I was really surprised how long the buying cycle is.
I'm noticing 5 months.
Yeah, so I think ours is probably similar, and we only started Hyros, I think, in May.
Yeah. And
our average buy cycle is like 31, 32 days from ad to sign up.
Yeah.
Whereas in reality, I think if we had a full year or two's data, it's probably a lot longer than that.
We've been going for a while. Our client, on average, people enter our database and become a client 5 months later. And in that time, they've listened to a podcast, they've watched a video, they've checked out, they've connected on LinkedIn, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Which one of your businesses is that?
Well, that's almost all of them.
Average,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. But the one that I've got that data on is called Dent Global. So we have a business accelerator program, and we've had 5,500 companies go through it. And it's key person of influence, personal brand accelerator. So people will hear that, opt in, get a book, get a this, get a that, and then 5 months later, on average, that's how long it takes for people to buy. Now, some people buy on the same day. You know, they hear about us, listen to a podcast, yep, let's go. And some people it's 12 months later or 18 months later, but 5 months is our average.
Now, talking about key person of influence, you've blown up across a lot of different podcast platforms, and come up a lot on YouTube. What would you say is the best 2 to 3 things someone can do to become a key person of influence?
So we use the 5 Ps. So 5 Ps is number one is having a great pitch, then publishing content, having product and service ecosystem that people can buy, raising your profile, and doing joint ventures and partnerships. So those are the 5 Ps. So the first thing that you need to do if you want to blow up or have a great key person of influence brand is you've got to have a great pitch. When someone says, tell me a bit about you, tell us a bit about what you do, it has to be interesting. Now, to a degree, you can script this, and you should script it, but to a degree, it's about having an awareness of what makes you interesting. What are you doing that's different, and how do you quickly communicate that? So the way it works is that whenever someone hears a person describing who they are and what they do, they immediately have a compulsion to throw you into one of 3 buckets. So they want to basically say you're a newbie who's just starting out, you're a worker bee who is in the industry just slogging it out, or you're an influential key person of influence who people flock to. And the default assumption is that you're either a worker bee or a newbie. So if you just simply say, I'm a personal trainer and I help people, get fitness results, and I'm qualified with a certificate 4 in nutrition and a blah, 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 people are like, okay, you're a worker bee. I already know that roughly speaking, you get paid between 50 and 150,000 a year, and that's like you're just a stock standard personal trainer or fitness professional, however you want to describe it, but you're a worker in the industry. If someone says, I'm passionate about transforming people's lives through fitness, I've written a book on it, I speak at conferences on it, I'm currently putting together a 12-episode podcast about stories of transformation, immediately, okay, you say, and one of my clients that I've just worked with has gone from feeling utterly defeated with their body and their fitness to having the best fitness of their life in their 40s. So boom, 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 boom. And it's like, oh, wow, you're talking about outcomes and results and the way that you influence the world. So just simply the way you describe who you are and what you do, you've just moved yourself into that 3rd bucket, that key person of influence. And people then respond to you completely differently. Immediately they're like, oh, okay, wow, I'm really lucky to be talking to you right now. So it's a very different feeling.
How important do you think first impressions are?
Very important, because it's very, very hard to move buckets once you're in the wrong bucket. Do you know one thing I've met a lot of very, very, very successful people, like billionaires and stuff like that, celebrities. One thing that's pretty common to all of them, whether they're conscious of it or not, is that they put so much effort and energy into what's called framing. So framing is like where you meet them, how you meet them, first impressions.
That's why I always have to be early. I'm OCD. And that's why I like you were early as well. So I was like,
well, so I met with a celebrity in LA when I was just in LA just recently, and of course, you have to meet at a particular private members club. And at that particular private members club, they have a tent that comes out onto the street, and the car pulls up, the door opens so that the tent is actually covering
who it
is. You then go in, they put a sticker over your phone camera, like they block off your camera phone with stickers, they register you in, and then they walk you through really politely, and then you go in and sit down with your guest. But that particular club, like before you've even met the person, you've had an experience of, I'm meeting a celebrity, right? Like, because
this is legit. Yeah.
This is serious stuff. Just the way this club is set up. So, celebrities meet their friends at those kind of clubs because it creates the whole shebang first impression. You'll notice that a lot of people of a certain level of wealth, they all wear certain brands of watches. And the watch is like a membership to a club. And it's sort of like, yeah, I've hit a certain level and I don't have to say it, but I'm clearly doing okay. I'm not a worker bee. So essentially, they're wearing watches that say, I'm not a worker bee.
What would be the best example of that watch?
Well, Rolex and AP and Patek. Yeah. And there's layers upon layers. So from normie level to I'm a key person of influence is like anything like an Omega or a Rolex or those kind of IWCs or those kind of things. But then once you're into the top levels, a Rolex doesn't cut it anymore. It's a Patek or it's a AP or it's, you've got to, there's even, layers on top of that again.
Richard Milles and stuff.
Get an RM and then people go, oh, okay, that's a £250,000 watch. He's really doing okay, right? So people have that. But it's interesting. The watch serves a purpose of being able to rapidly put you in a different category. And that's what is happening. People are framing. It's called framing. A great example of framing is quite literally the frame that a painting is in. So if you see a painting, let's say it's just a hand-drawn sketch, and you just see that up on a wall at a high school, and you go to see the head teacher to talk to them about something that's happening related to the school, and you see a hand-drawn sketch on the wall, you would just assume, because of the framing, that was done by one of the students, and it's not worth anything. Now, if you went to the National Portrait Gallery and there's a massive wall and there's this beautiful frame and that exact same sketch is in that frame and there's a set of lights on the sides, on the floors and on the roof pointing at that frame, you're going to go, oh, that must be like Leonardo da Vinci or, who is it? All right, it must be worth 20, 30 million. So the exact same sketch would either make your brain think that's a $20 million painting or that's worthless, it's just a student who did it.
How do you use that to your advantage?
So things like the way that you show up, the social media journey, the 7-Eleven 4, is definitely framing. So being on certain podcasts, for example, is also framing. If you've been on Diary of a CEO, that says, oh, well, you're part of that group. So if someone knows that I've been on Diary of a CEO prior to meeting me, they're like, oh, I'm excited to meet you because I know you've been on that show and I saw that. So that is part of the framing. So the framing is anything that's happening outside of the interaction, before, during, or after, outside of the interaction that is other than the interaction. I'll give you another simple example. I'm trying to think about, I'm not only thinking about things that I do, but I'm thinking about things that anyone could do. Having an executive assistant. Now, you could have an assistant in the Philippines who's not super crazy expensive, but just the fact that an assistant books your diary for you says that your time's really valuable and that you're busy with other things. So there's something different about having an assistant or dealing with someone who's got an assistant who reaches out and makes the time versus someone who books their own calendar. So even that's framing. What I see on your website. If I go to your website and I see awards, that's framing. If I go to your Instagram and I see 100,000 followers, that's framing. We're going to have a different perception of each other, based upon those types of silly things. But it is all framing. What
was your first impression of me today?
Oh, you've been clearly working out.
Yeah, sometimes.
Have you worked out before? Who did we meet through, right? So who we met through is part of the framing. The fact that I've heard great things, the fact that you've got a great Instagram account, all of that sort of stuff. One of the top podcasts. So it was who we met through, seeing your account, all of that helps create the perception and the persona. It's interesting when... you often hear people who've met a celebrity or they've met a billionaire or something like that. They're like, oh, they're so down to earth. They're so humble. They're so amazing. They're just a real person. They're just a real human. That's only incredible because of the framing, right? So if you meet a normal person and they act like a normal person, like no one gets back from Tesco shopping centre and said, oh, I bumped into the shelf stacker today. They were such a normal person. They were so just like humble and down to earth and just really helpful. It was amazing. It's not, because we weren't expecting that. But when we see phenomenal framing, someone who's got 10 million followers and they're making a massive impact in the world and they've won all these awards and then they're just a normal person, it almost seems incredible that they're just a normal person.
Do you think a lot of people are too afraid to maybe almost be their authentic selves online? Because I see a lot of people, particularly in the fitness industry, where it's like we'll talk about here is framing, but like it's very manufactured, which I think you obviously need to push a certain narrative, but in my opinion you need to almost like be the narratives that then fit your niche, if that makes sense.
Here's what I know for sure. I know that the schooling system has trained everyone wrong for the times that we're in.
What do you mean?
The schooling system is designed in the early 1800s to create component labor. So I want you to think about, what were they trying to achieve? They had local factories that were less than 5 to 10 miles away. Those local factories needed physical parts to manufacture things, but they also needed physical parts of people who were the types of people who could slot in, and you could basically have them turn up on time, leave on time, perform tasks and functions, and they would be reliable parts in the factory. So you don't want unreliable, pieces of a factory, including the people. So the schooling system was there to make you into a component labor piece ready for a factory in the local 5 to 10 miles. So the whole system is designed from that seed of intention. And even though things have changed, the seed of intention matters. Like, where did this grow from? It actually matters because it carries that intention forward subconsciously. So everything that we do in school is about being a good little producer, a functional unit, and also it's about producing value, not selling value. So, for example, if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, you need to be disruptive. But disruptive is one of the worst things you can be in school. If you want to be a successful entrepreneur today, you need to be an attention seeker. You need attention. But being an attention seeker is the worst thing in the world. If you want to be a really good entrepreneur today, you need to outsource things that you're not good at to someone who's good at it. But that's called cheating, right? So if you outsource your maths homework, you've cheated. If you outsource your maths homework as an entrepreneur, that's called having a financial controller, a bookkeeper, right? So we're taught all these things that are bad and wrong, but they're the very things that make you successful. So if you take a preschool age kid, 5 years old, school hasn't yet crept in on them, they burst in the room. Dad, Mom, look what I did. I made a paper airplane. Look, it flies. They don't care what you're doing. They're just going to arrest your conversation. They're just going to interrupt you. They're super pumped. They're bursting with life. A 5-year-old fills the room with energy. Like, their life force energy just expands into every room they're in. Fast forward to when they're 15, 16, 17, they go to school every single day. You hardly know they're in the house. They kind of creep around. How was your day? Yeah, it's okay. What did you get up to today? Not much. So they've started to adopt the school system.
One thing I think is an interesting perspective of that is, I can't remember the exact statistic, but is the amount of times you're told no as a child from like 5 to maybe 16, which is why, in my opinion, a lot of people have that no, I can't do this mentality.
Of course, yeah, I'm not allowed to.
You're not allowed to go set up a business and move to Dubai, and
you're not allowed.
Yeah. Like, you have to stay within the regime that's created, which I think in particular is British culture, is like, don't step outside of the box.
Yeah, even just lots of little rules creep up on you. Like, for example, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, right? But we got rid of smoking in clubs. And I remember when you could smoke in a nightclub and you come home stinking of cigarettes from a nightclub, and that was just normal. And then we got rid of it. And I remember going to Dubai and seeing people smoking in nightclubs. And it was like, whoa, wow, whoa. Those guys are breaking the rules. So there's just this set of rules that I don't even think about. Oh, you're not allowed to do that. So there's all these little rules of like, oh, you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that. I remember going to Bali for the first time and asking the Balinese guy, how old do you have to be to drive? When you know how. I said, how old do you need to be to drink alcohol? When you can afford to. So, like, his answers were not rules-based. They were like, can you do it? Yeah, whenever you want, whenever you know how, when you can afford to. So we don't realize, but in Western culture, we're just surrounded by rules. We are just like wrapped up in red tape, and our brain just adopts these like subconscious rules and regulations that we never question. The beautiful thing about Elon Musk's mind is he questions rules all the time. Who made that up? One of Elon Musk's favorite questions is it against the laws of physics to do that? And if it's not against the laws of physics, then it's just made up. So if it's just made up, we'll just make it up again.
It's interesting what you mentioned about the laws and legislation. Listening to Donald Trump, Joe Rogan podcast, the thing that Donald Trump said that all the top CEOs wanted wasn't necessarily tax cuts, it was legislation cuts.
Yeah, reduce regulation. I'll give you a classic example. I was talking about this the other day. In London, to build a building, you're going to spend something like 6 years in planning, and there's all these regulations, and the cost of building the building, something like 15% is going to be dealing with authorities to get approval to build a building, some sort of infrastructure project. Now, you could circumvent that pretty easily if you simply said, if you want to build a building, you can put it up in your own time, but you have to, the only condition is you have to put enough money in a fund for us to be able to pull the building down and destroy it, to blow it up and level it back to the ground. And if you build a building that isn't safe and that doesn't meet decent criteria, then we've got the money to just blow it up and we'll destroy it. So if it doesn't meet the code, so go ahead and build it, but if it doesn't meet the code, we blow the thing back to the ground and you'll have to start again. Now, just simply doing that would basically create a situation where every developer would build one hell of a building, right? They'd build something that is, they don't want to risk having to start again because the money's already been transferred across to blow the building up if they'd get it wrong. So it's funny that like we've now over-regulated over everything, but it's like there are super fast and easy ways that you could get around this where development happens. Look at the speed that you can build a city here in Dubai. Like, you know, in 10 years, this place has just like gone massive. You know, it's crazy to think that Liverpool and Blackpool and South Yorkshire, beautiful parts of the world for their own reasons, just desolate because there's no development there. It's not worth filling in the paperwork. It's not worth doing. All you would have to do is say, these are now special economic zones. Do what you like. We've got looser regulations. Basically, we've cut and pasted Dubai. You pay way less taxes, you know, way less regulations in these special economic zones, and they'd explode. Las Vegas is an example. Las Vegas was a train stop where they said, oh, you know, we'd turn a blind eye to casinos at this particular train stop, and it turned into one of the most wealthy cities in America just simply because they had low regulations there for a particular time. So the reason I'm talking about these is an analogy for people's minds. So when you take someone whose mind is consumed with regulations and what they believe is possible for their own life, we have to remove the regulations from our head. We have to remove the red tape that we impose on ourselves. So we project onto the world what's going on internally. So when we get frustrated with regulations and we get frustrated with governments and we get frustrated with all these things, it's actually because internally we're feeling a sense of frustration that we're not able to fully express. So we project it onto the world, but it tells you actually you need to do the work yourself to break free of your own red tape.
With that, how important do you think it is for entrepreneurs to focus on personal development to get to the next level of where they want to be?
Personal development is great. One step better than personal development is changing of environment. So, for example, if I took pretty much anyone and I got you hanging around a different set who always hang out on 100-foot yachts, float companies, raise 50 million for ideas and projects, develop technology, hire teams, if that was just the norm in your closest 5 group of friends, there would be no spoken transformation required. You would just immediately adopt the principles that you're seeing around you. You normalize against your environment. And in the same way, if I took the most personally developed person and said you have to spend time around these miserable gits who, you know, can't get anything done, you will just become a bit like those miserable people. So I think probably the most exciting thing is that the speed at which you can change your life is just hanging around with different people, having access to different conversations, having different levels of accountabilities and expectations on you. So I would call that just a change of environment.
Touching on the legislation side of things again, do you feel that's one of the reasons maybe why Western economies, Western countries are really struggling? You look at somewhere like Dubai that's literally exploding, actually the Middle East as a whole.
Oh, it's exactly that. Yeah, it's exactly that. It's a concerted effort from the top of we don't want growth. We're afraid of growing populations. We're afraid of growing economies. We're afraid of growing consumption. you can see that all the leaders of these Western economies, especially the left-leaning type people, they're extremely fearful of what it would mean if we had babies, if we consumed more stuff, if we had bigger, more exciting lives. You know, they're very deeply skeptical about that. I think it's driven from a fear that the world is overpopulated and we're over-consuming. We're consuming too much too fast, and there's too many people doing that. So they've essentially thrown the brakes on subconsciously to the Western economies, and other economies that don't have that fear, that are excited by growth and excited by development, excited by consumption, excited by creativity. Those economies are just roaring ahead. I mean, it only stands to reason. Like, think about it objectively. With everything we now know and we've developed in the last 20, 30 years with technology, we should be just exploding with growth. Like, you know, unless you put the brakes on. Like in the last 20, 30 years, metaphorically, we've built a F1 car, but, you know, we've basically said, oh, no, you're not allowed to drive it. Too dangerous.
30 mile an hour speed limit.
Yeah, except for places like Dubai that have said, go for it. Let's go wild. Let's see what's possible.
With that, there's obviously was the British Empire, almost like the American Empire now. Do you think it's coming to an end of maybe those eras and we're seeing a rise of different regions perhaps?
Yeah, the British Empire was very famous for, hey, we've got great ideas and technology. We've got the industrial age. We've got all of our institutions. The British Empire was, hey, guys, go wild. Go out there and spread Britishness. Take the flag and let us know how you go. So it had that very much expansive energy of go conquer the world, right? That was the game at the time. Obviously, there are downsides. There are plenty of downsides to that, but there are plenty of upsides to it as well. You know, it was a pretty amazing thing that the British did with that attitude of go conquer the world, go do big stuff. There is definitely a new world being created at the moment. Here's how I see the new world. The new world is actually the digital cloud world. So it's not all empires up until this point have been geographical empires. So you've had the Ottoman Empire and the Spanish Empire and the British Empire and the American Empire. But the strange thing about the American Empire at the moment is that you can go to Silicon Valley and you can see the wealthiest people in the world with massive mega mansions and all the cars and all the planes and all that sort of stuff, private jets coming and going all the time. And then just scattered all around them is poverty, like just abject poverty, people living in tents and, you know, shitting on the streets and all this kind of stuff, like slum cities building up around it. And imagine that there's actually two worlds now. One would be called the dirt world or the ground world or the land world, and one would be called the digital cloud world. We'll call that the cloud as in the digital cloud. People who make their money in the cloud, it's like the world is just exploding for them. Suddenly there are customers everywhere. There are opportunities everywhere. You know, the world is their oyster. I've just signed up a client in Brazil. I've just signed a client in Japan. I've just signed a client in New Zealand, South Africa, boom, 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 right? So it's like, it's effortless. It's exciting. It's frictionless. It's, you know, it's not abnormal to expand at 3, 4, 5% month on month on month on month. If you're in software, if you're in data, if you're in media, if you're intellectual property. So if you're in those kind of industries and you make your money in the cloud, life has never been better. You're in the new empire. And then you get people who are like, well, my life's not going so well. It's like, okay, well, tell me, where do you physically make your money? Like, can you walk there? Yes. See, I can't walk to any of my clients. Like, my clients are everywhere. If you can physically meet your clients, that's a big red flag.
To a lot of people listening to this who are like...
confrontational, right?
Yeah, I would agree. And a lot of people who are listening to this who are not in the digital world, would you say it's too late for them to jump into that?
It's not, but it's becoming a bigger and bigger mindset shift. So in the same way, to use this parallel example, in the same way that the British Empire, they turned up to a knife fight with a gun, and it was just like, they turn up and out come the swords and spears, and they go, We got guns. We got muskets. We got
Soaring,
right. We got cannons. So they just turned up and they weren't even afraid. They're just like, well, if you've got our technology, it's not even a thing. So you can imagine someone like sitting there furiously sharpening their sword. The British are coming. Right, this time I really want to beat the British, so I'm going to really sharpen my sword today, or I'm going to get a bigger sword, or I'm going to do more practice with my sword. It's like, sorry, that just doesn't work. You have to adopt a completely new paradigm that warfare is no longer swords, it's guns. And it's the same. It's not too late. The minute you get your hands on a gun, you're in the gun game. Fine, right? So now you can go up against the British, but you've got to have a gun. And it's the same. You know, if a fitness trainer is sitting there going, oh, I'll just do more hours in the gym and I'll put more leaflets around and I'll go down to all the supermarkets and put a poster on the corkboard and all that sort of stuff. Okay, you've got a sword, you know, you've got a dagger, but unfortunately you're up against the people who've got the big guns. You've got to get your hands on the gun. And that means you've got to have a digital profile, you've got to have a social media profile, you've got to have content, you've got to have media. You got to get into understanding data and how that works. You got to form a bit of a team, maybe 3-4 people around you. You got to play this different game. As soon as you do, like a light switch, you're going to experience a different reality.
With that, do you think the market for influencer marketing is a bubble that's going to burst? Because it's probably 3-4 years ago, maybe when Gymshark exploded, that was like a new thing, and it wasn't like market sophistication around it. People that knew were getting paid to promote stuff. Do you think that that's a market that's declining, and what do you foresee maybe filling that void if there is going to be one?
I think it's not going to be so easy that you can just take your clothes off and go on Instagram and get 1 million followers and then sell stuff. I think that the barrier will change. It'll just involve a bit more sophistication, but with AI, the sophistication won't be that much harder or time consuming if you're ahead of the curve. You know, the money is always made by those who are doing something that's hard to do or undesirable to do. So it pretty much, I mean, you can't really escape that principle. There's a great principle, and every fitness trainer knows that if it were easy, everyone would do it and it wouldn't be valuable. All right, if it was super easy to lose weight and have a six-pack, then it wouldn't be very valuable. Wouldn't be an industry around it, right? There is hard work required. Who ends up with a great body? People who are disciplined, people who do the work, people who lift, people who get into a rhythm. And it's not like they had a good 3 months. You know, if every fitness trainer thinks about their best client who got the best results, they were super committed, they adopted a new lifestyle, a new way of doing things, they did the hard work, and they did it for a long period of time. Would you say that's fair to say?
100%.
And everyone's looking for the easy answer. So the problem with fitness trainers in many cases is that they are their idiot. They're like their idiot fitness client, but for business. So they're just like, oh, tell me the easy answer. Like, I don't want to have to think about this. I just want to, like, tell me, how do I get the six-pack? How do I get the six-figure bank account? You know, how do I just do it? Like, what's the easy thing to do now? It's like, anything that's super easy to do, it's already lost its value. So so is influencer marketing over? No, but it's moved to the people who are more sophisticated with it. Because in the early days, it was kind of difficult, hard and new and unproven to go off and build those Instagram accounts. But now, okay, we all know that it works. So more people have done it. All the tools have developed. It's easier, but it's not as rewarding. Look at who's doing really, really well. It's the Instagram account with the long-form podcast. It's the Instagram account with the ecosystem of products and services. It's the Instagram account with a long-term partnership with a software company where we're going to make money over the next 4 years together. And we've brokered a deal where we can actually work together over time. So it's not like, oh yeah, I'll just do a single post and sell $250,000 worth of stuff. It's like, no, I'll do a post every week for 2 or 3 years, and then we'll sell the company for 200 million, and I'll end up with 10% of that. You know, so it's sophisticated. So it's getting more sophisticated. But that sophistication, if you're willing to adopt that, has once again exponential results attached to it. So I know some people who are well-known fitness influencers. They've gone from doing posts for 10 or 20 grand, which doesn't really exist anymore, to doing equity deals with up and coming companies that are like 3, 4, 5 year journeys where they make way more money, but it's just harder. It just takes a bit of delayed gratification, but the money's going to be huge.
The word I was going to use there was patience. I think it's the number one thing that everyone lacks, because everyone, even like with us we've helped hundreds and hundreds of trainers to scale their businesses, is they want the overnight success that happens tomorrow, and it's like, dude, it doesn't happen like that.
And it's like you're being that idiot client who's asking you, can I get a 6-pack next week? Yeah.
And it's the repeated bout effect of doing the same thing every day.
The same mindset you apply to that fitness that got you the body, you've got to apply that mindset to the business.
That's why, in my opinion, anyone who's in really good shape should be good as an entrepreneur, because it's exactly the same skill sets essentially and character traits. Yeah.
And entrepreneurs should be getting fit, you know.
Do you think that's a new wave of thing that's happening more? Because you see, like, I know, for example, like Mark Zuckerberg getting in better shape, doing MMA. You see a lot of other high-level entrepreneurs now taking their health very seriously.
Yeah, and I love that trend. I love that MMA has become big, and working out. Like, these two things are starting to come together really nicely. And it's great because, and mind you, I'm quite out of shape at the moment because I've had this injury and I've had to start right back from the start and all this sort of stuff. And I've got 3 kids who eat fish fingers. But those two mindsets, they go hand in glove, and you can apply the mindset to either, and your life compounds and gets better with both. So fitness gives you all sorts of benefits non-stop. Great business gives you all sorts of benefits non-stop. And when you have both, anyone who's got both, you're unstoppable. You're in a different category. I put this actually down to living this new cloud world. This cloud world is people who make money online. They can live and work from anywhere. Governments can up taxes. They'll just move. They are very self-sufficient people. They're incredibly healthy and fit. They understand their food, their diet. They build their own food networks. They understand the importance of sourcing the right ingredients. They understand the importance of making their money online. So you want to kind of think about this as an entirely new lifestyle that exists. There is a new category of person who can live and work anywhere, make insane amounts of money, the types of money that most people want to earn in a year, they make in a month. And that's just like a very normal thing. And they're able to take their health and fitness seriously. That's what we're trying to achieve, is the moving towards that model.
I think what is interesting with that as well, do you think that because of the social media and people being in front of the camera all the time, that they're more conscious of like, I don't want to have a double chin when I'm on that podcast with Daniel, do you know what I mean?
Well, I've got my double chin on today, I mean, you'd know more about that with the fitness industry. Do you think a lot of people are very body conscious?
100%. I see that. So I actually heard the interesting statistic on this is actually it's male body dysmorphia is growing way, way, way faster and outpacing the female one. Which is
that makes sense.
Interesting.
Here's what I think is a really useful idea. I think a useful idea is to be multifaceted, that you're not competing on that single metric. Because you and I both know there are certain genetics where, you get one person who works out and they're going to look absolutely amazing, and it's going to be a lot easier, and also just the way they shape up is just great. And then there are other people who they're in incredible shape and they work out all the time, but they just don't ooze the same aesthetic. But what I think is really great is being at the crossroads of something. So having health and fitness as one street, and then having something else as another street. So like, for example, you might be really talking a lot about health, fitness, wellness meets being an IT consultant. You might be talking about health, fitness, and wellness as a parent with young kids. So you're blending a few things. So, for example, me as a dad of 3 kids, I'm less inclined to spend a lot of time listening to a fitness influencer who doesn't have kids, because I'm going to go, well, it's easy for you. You haven't got 3 kids running around all the time, but if I was to see someone my own age who's a dad, maybe if they've also got a couple of businesses and they're also in great shape, I'm going to go, oh, okay, now even if they don't have the same aesthetic. So we're all going. But the beautiful thing about this digital world is that you can find your tribe. I'll give you an example that's not fitness related. There was a woman that we worked with years ago, and she immediately described herself as a financial planner, financial wealth manager, and that she helped people with their wealth management, helped people with their financial management. Okay, worker bee. And then she said, when we did some digging, she said, for 20 years I've been working with rural families that own farms, and that I'm really good at helping to understand the multi-generational dynamics and how people marrying into the farm change the dynamic. And I actually help rural families that own farms to do their financial plan and their family plan for 2 generations, and to create a family code of conduct and to communicate more effectively with the new partners and the new spouses who are coming into the family who don't understand farming. And as soon as she started explaining this, it's like, damn, you should really just massively double down on this. This is amazing. So she did, and she ended up with clients all over the world who are rural families who own farms. And because she combined financial planning with rural families that own farms, she became a category of 1, and she ended up with clients all over the world. So you're trying when you remove your mind from geography, if your mind is stuck in a geography, let's say you're a fitness trainer in Mayfair, you're only thinking about how do I attract as many people from Mayfair as possible. Mayfair is a big reason that people are going to work with me. When you say I'm a fitness trainer who works with parents who have autistic kids, well, I wonder how many of those there are out there. Probably millions, right? And why would you need a specialist in that? Why would you need someone like that? Well, maybe you just want to go on a journey with someone who understands what you're going through. Maybe you understand that that's your one moment of the week to be in a different bubble, different world with a different level of stress or a different type of focus. So suddenly it's like, okay, well, we can have, these different niches that never existed before because of the digital world that we live in.
It's interesting you say that, because some of the biggest fitness coaches we work with who help scale their businesses work in very specific niches. An example would be Dave Kennedy is a farmer from Ireland who makes 150,000 euros a month coaching farmers to lose weight. Which like super specific.
Super
right?
specific.
And it's,
I love it.
Because he is a farmer and grew up on a farm,
Yeah.
and like films reels of him like shoveling shit.
Yeah.
And they're like, this guy's for me.
And he gets it.
Yeah,
he gets what it's like to have to get up in the morning and do the farming stuff and fix a tractor and then, deal with the family stuff. So he gets it. So that's just an awesome example. He's making 150 grand a month, right? So when you think about body dysmorphia, if you're only benchmarking yourself on one category, that you're just fitness, and it puts you in such a wide market. I mean, think about a fitness competition, and there's 6 guys who are going to be on stage posing. You're going to look around, have a look at the 6, and go, am I fit compared to these other 6 guys, 5 guys? But now imagine that there's 600,000 people. That's going to freak your brain out because there's so many that you're now competing with, and it's like, so it's crushing. It's the same thing that's happened to women. Women are kind of almost hardwired to look around and say, what are my strengths? Am I the prettiest? Am I the best, funniest? Am I the best personality? And they're also hardwired to kind of look around the room and go, who's the best catch in the room? But then if you remove all those barriers and every girl grows up comparing herself to the most ridiculously genetic perfect specimen who's also airbrushed, and also with exposure to the most phenomenal Prince Charming men on the planet, it's going to warp the senses. It's going to warp the instincts. And it's going to make you feel like, unless I get this kind of guy and unless I present myself as this kind of girl, then I'm not enough. And it's like, well, in any other time in history, you would have been the most amazing person in the room. But the room has now included way too many people.
With that, you being a parent, it's a slightly off-topic question to ask. How would you manage that for your children?
God, it's so hard. The first thing is I'm trying to make my kids grow up with very limited social media exposure. Especially my daughter. I would be very, very happy if we get right to the top end of teens. I know it's unrealistic, but without TikTok and without some of these pernicious social media platforms. The research says that gaming is nowhere near as bad, especially delayed gratification games. So anything that requires struggle, and delayed gratification. Like, so for example, my kids have played this game called Zelda, and you have to roam around for, days trying to find the key and then trying to unlock a puzzle, and then that gives you an ingredient, and then you can go and take that to the wizard or whatever happens. So you've got this like multi-stage delayed gratification. So you're not flooding the brain with constant dopamine like a Candy Crush easy game. That actually, the research says that's totally fine. No real downsides with that. But the research is very, very clear. On the worst end is short videos. So short videos, TikTok is like crack cocaine for the brain. It's you are just ramming dopamine down, and stuff that you might get a glimpse of in a week. You're just getting over again. So it's like absolute drives a truck through kids' brains. And then you've got easy games, Candy Crush, silly games that actually give you the answers, like casino type games. So there's that end. So as a parent, you've got to distinguish, is this about genuine friendship? So for example, WhatsApp is not in the same category as Instagram. If your kids are WhatsApping each other and they're in a WhatsApp group together and they're up late at night talking on WhatsApp, that's nowhere near the same thing as scrolling through endless videos on TikTok. So you kind of, as a parent, you got to understand, why is this stuff toxic, and why is this stuff less toxic? And what's nice at the moment is the data's actually coming out, and it's really clear that there's a chasm between certain things that look the same but actually very different.
Here's a question that's not going to be relevant for maybe 10 years or so, but say your children's generation, when they come to being marketed to by the masses, do you think the way they will react to certain things will be different based upon being exposed to some of these things early?
It's really so soon to tell. And what's hard at the moment is that we have vast different experiences in people's upbringing. So it used to be that we all pretty much had a very shared experience of what an upbringing was like. We played on the same streets, we had the same games, listened to the same music, watched the same TV shows. So we grew up with very much a shared experience. Kids these days are growing up in their own unique bubbles. And, you've in a school in London, you've got some kids growing up in like strict Islamic households that practice a really rigid religious faith, and they're growing up next to people who are allowed to have unfettered use of their phone and can view pornography, and they can check out absolutely anything online. So, and then there's everything in between, and so essentially these shared realities don't exist anymore. I remember, if you grew up in my time, everyone watched The Simpsons, everyone watched Seinfeld, everyone watched these same sort of shows. So you would go to school the next day and talk about the same music, and that Blink-182 album's just come out. We're all listening to it, and we're all listening to the same few radio stations. So we had this big shared reality. So it's going to be weird 10 years from now that two people who grew up in the same neighborhood could have a vastly different experience as to what they grew up with, more so than ever before.
Makes a lot of sense. One of the things you mentioned to me before the podcast is that you're very similar to me in terms of type A, and you already have 8 businesses and you want a 9th. How
sounds
two questions. How do you manage the 8 businesses you have from a practical sense, and how do you also not get red shiny object to have 20 businesses at this point?
There's no problem in having 20 businesses. Well, the way it works from a practical sense, you have a board of directors. So in my case, I got 6 members of the board. And then we've got centralized 2 executive roles, which is CEO and CFO. And then each business has its own business-focused chief operating officer, chief revenue or marketing officer, and general manager. So essentially, each business has its own management team or executive team that manages a team and reports into a CEO and a CFO. And the CEO and CFO report into a board. So it's an age-old structure. It's how bigger businesses operate. You just adopt best practice as to what it looks like.
For you, in terms of hiring the right people, is obviously one of the most high leverage things you can do. Do you have a certain approach you look to for that, or a certain type of character traits?
Well, I do, but I'm at a different level than most of your listeners. Probably be better if I talk about the early days.
Yeah, that'd be better.
So starting a business should be you and a co-founder, or you and a number two. And I call that a scout team. And a scout team is two people trying to see if there's a good opportunity together. It's more fun to do it with someone else, and immediately it kind of gives you two focuses. One person should be focused on, can we sell this? And that's the primary thing. And the next person is, can we deliver this? So let's say we want to do fitness for farmers. So the first thing is, can we sell fitness to farmers? And we want to reach out and talk to 30 farmers and say, is fitness an issue? What would you be looking for? Have you got anyone that you're already listening to? How much have you got to spend on fitness? All of that sort of stuff. So we go out and we're just testing, can we sell fitness to farmers? And then the other side is, can we deliver what they ask for? So they've all said, oh, well, actually I want it delivered in a parcel in the mail, and it needs to be purple, and it has to arrive before 4 a.m. and blah, 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 blah. Oh, okay. Right. Or I want a daily workout that is delivered at 3:30 a.m. before I milk the cows. Okay, fine. Can we deliver that, whatever it is? So the first question is, can we sell it? Can we deliver it? So the scout team is working on those two questions, and we're conducting a test of 30 to 150 people. Until we've tested 30 to 150 people, we don't have enough data to know whether we're onto a winner or not. So that's base number one. Once we know we're onto a winner, we want to move to 4-person team. And we basically want to have a salesperson, a delivery person, and a Swiss Army knife. A Swiss Army knife fills the gaps. They just make sure everything's happening. They're like basically someone to delegate stuff to, someone to kind of keep you doing the most valuable thing. So if you imagine that the salesperson's time's worth £100 an hour, the delivery person's time's worth £100 an hour, you want to have someone whose time is £15 an hour, £20 an hour, so that you can just make sure that all the low value stuff is done by someone else. Keep these guys. The fourth person is what I'd call a high value associate, key person of influence associate. So what you're looking for, like if I was starting a fitness related business and I'm not particularly, fit, I would immediately get someone like yourself and say, will you be our associate who helps us with content and marketing and all that, and become a bit of a face for the business? We can promote you as someone who's going to be part of the business. We'll pay you $2,000 for an hour to do the video, the filming, or the footage, whatever. We'll do that a few times a month. Make it super easy on you, massively high value for your time. So if the salesperson and for kind of round numbers, if the salesperson and the delivery person are worth £100 an hour, and the Swiss Army knife is £20 an hour, we want to find someone whose time would be worth $1,000 an hour or more. And we want to have like a little bit of that, because that's what gives it the zhuzh. That's what gives it the secret sauce.
Superpower almost.
Superpower, right? That elevates it. In law firms, there's a senior partner who's been around and won all these old cases, and has written a book. And they don't work in the firm; they're just there as the figurehead senior partner, and they kind of open doors, and they get wheeled into certain meetings to close a sale, and they're little tiny little spring. But it's the lawyers who do all the work. That's how law firms work. But you need the senior partner. You've got to have that person who kind of puts the ribbon on it. So there's your 4-person team. And then you go up to an 8-person team, which is now you want an internal key person of influence. The salesperson steps up and builds a personal brand, or the delivery person steps up and builds a personal brand. You bring in the general manager to just run the day-to-day. You've got a sales and marketing person. You've got a delivery team, a customer success team. You've got a financial controller, an admin or executive assistant. So now you've built this like little 8-person team. The dream team is about 8 people. That you're never going to have a better lifestyle than 8 people with 7-figure revenue, 6-figure profit. Everyone's getting paid well, plus you're making good money. You've got total fun freedom and flexibility. So I've got a ton of clients that are like $3 million a year of revenue, 600,000 of profit on top of what they would normally earn, and it's an 8-person team, and they just everyone's remote working. Everyone, gets stuff done. They've got their little leaderboard internally, their dashboards, and it's just super, super fun, freedom, flexibility. They're below the radar of being on anyone's radar in terms of being a bigger business and being competed with, and they're above the fray of being stuck in society, having to play by society's rules. So they're in this beautiful zone of total freedom, go where you like, do what you like, move if you like. You can do anything you want now. You've got fun, everything's fun, everything's free, everything's flexible. You're not a big business, and you're not stuck in the system, and it's like this heavenly spot. So what you're trying to get to is that 8-person team. Out of curiosity, how many are on your team?
32.
Okay, you're at the next level up.
Yeah.
Have you ever studied the military?
Not specifically.
Okay, so the military is scout team, fire team, 2, 4, section, 8, platoon, 30. Okay. So you're a platoon.
And that's actually come down a whack as well, because from experience, I tried to push thinking more people was a better solution, and I realised that we actually want less people but better people.
Yeah, it's often that you kind of breathe, you go up, overdo it, and then come back a bit. And that's fairly normal, and it's actually really healthy. Like many people go up to about 15, 16, 17 and come back to 8. And then when they're at 8, they're just like, oh, this is a dream. This is so great. But you have to almost go to 15 to get back to the 8 that was a dream.
100%, because I think...
Do you remember when you were 8?
Do I remember when I was 8? I
had
had
8 people.
Yeah, it was way easier.
Was it fun?
Yeah, it was fun. But like, I would actually say, I was actually thinking about this morning because I was looking at a photo of me from 2019 when COVID happened, because I needed it for a presentation. I was like, it was actually more fun back then.
Yeah.
Because it was just, there was less complexity. And
yeah, well, the 30-person platoon, you're a performance business at that point. And this is where your 8-figure revenue, 7-figure profit type thing. And, you need structures. You know, with 30 people, it's very easy for a lot of wastage to creep in. You know, there's all these conversations. You end up having meetings about meetings, and dashboards about which dashboards to use, and there's complexity. There's a lot of complexity, and there's weight. So with 30 people, your payroll, it's thousands and thousands per day. So if you're not making thousands and thousands per day of sales, you're not even covering your payroll. So so there's that pressure, and if you look in the military, who's having the most fun? It's always the corporal and lance corporal. The lieutenant who runs the platoon is under stress, and the corporal who runs a team of 8 is having fun. So the typical person listening, one person is bullshit. It's too much for one person to do. 2 people is like discovering, and it's like, the beginning of an adventure. 4-person is like, we're cracking the code, we're doing well, we can see the light. 8-person is like just heaven, lifestyle, amazing. 30-person is a serious business. It's got plenty of strengths and weaknesses, but we've got to be a grown-up. We've got to behave like a grown-up business. That's how it feels on those journeys there.
I would agree with that 100%. And I say for most of our audience, the dream scenario you probably want is sub 10. Yeah. And you can really manage that well and have a good balance of everything overall.
But it's really important. Don't be one.
100%.
Don't be one. Like, I see so many people trying to do everything on their own, and they're like, oh, but how do you do it when you're all on your own? I don't know, man. I would rather run a 150-person team than one. I think it's easier to have 30 people than one. One is horrible.
So I don't know if this is similar to yourself, but I wouldn't say I'm lazy, but I don't like to do certain things. So I will hire people as quickly as possible to get myself out of things I don't want to do, so I can focus on things I do enjoy.
That's not lazy. That's smart.
But I see a lot of people who are maybe too arrogant in some respects to think like, I can do it better than everyone else. I can't hire someone else to do this for me. Yeah,
maybe you can. But the question is what does it cost to outsource it to someone who's good, who can do a good job? Because a lot of things you can outsource for less than 40 or 50 pounds an hour. The minute you realize that your time is worth more than that, that's where you need to just replace that. You've got to keep pushing the value of what you do up. So, maybe you can edit videos better, but if you can get a good video editor who does a pretty damn good job and gets similar amount of views, and it's less than your hourly rate, then bring that person in and get them doing it. It's also more fun to do stuff with people. Business is a lot like robbing a bank. You would not want to rob a bank on your own. You want to rob a bank with a group of friends. So I've heard, right? Because
this is one of the businesses.
Yeah. You look at all the bank robbery movies, and it starts with like, let's get beer and pizzas, and we'll build a Lego Matchbox cars and Lego, and we'll or we'll sit there in the car together and scout the bank out, and what time did the guards change and all that sort of stuff. And it's we get the group of people together and we work it out together. We bounce ideas. I hope everyone listening has had an experience where they've been up to something with a friend. Like, you know, it's that feeling of being up to something.
Scheming.
Scheming.
It's like Pinky in the Brain.
Yeah. What are we going to do? It's the same thing we do every day. We're going to take over the world, right? So it's scheming. It's scheming with people. It's being up to something with friends. And that's kind of like it's the best feeling in the world to be up to stuff with friends. You know, there's an energy that I call up to something energy. Up to something energy is that, like you see people who are dead behind the eyes, and you say, what are you up to? Like, what is it you're working on? Like, what are you thinking about for the year ahead? Oh, no idea, nothing. You see someone whose like eyes are sparkling. It's like, what are you up to? Oh, we're working on a thing and we're going to do a thing. It's probably going to fail, but it's going to be fun anyway. You know, you want up to something energy.
I also think it's more fun winning as a team than winning on your own.
So good.
And I think if you're someone who's listening to that's a founder and it's your business,
yeah,
the ability you have to change your team's lives as well is insane.
Yeah. There's going to be a day where you get a big win and you're going to buy your teammate a Rolex. And it's going to be like, you're going to give them a Rolex and surprise them with it. And they're going to go, what? This is wild. And it's going to be one of the best moments in the world. It's going to be one of the best moments where you go, hey, I bought you, you know, we've smashed it. Here's a present. You know, those moments are way better than anything you can do on your own.
We talked about digital world. You're also an author.
Yep.
Do you think people should look to write books? And do you think that's something that is still a huge leverage opportunity?
Yeah, the book format is a huge leverage opportunity, and it's a bit like the long form podcast. That it's and it's also like a Rolex. It's a signifier that you are in a certain category. You'll notice that when you go to conferences, every speaker on the stage has written a book. Everyone. You'll notice that on major podcasts, almost all the guests are either celebrities who haven't written a book, but they're celebrities, or they're authors, they've written a book. The book says something about you. It says, I care enough to write a book. So it puts you in this category. It seems that it basically means that even if no one, like, you know, your mate who does the Fitness for Farmers, if he's written the book, Fitness for Farmers, and I go and Google and it's on Amazon and Fitness for Farmers, and I see, oh, he's written the book on being a fitness for farmers. I don't even need to read the book to know this guy seriously is going to have something of value for me. All right. So just knowing that the book was written. So being an author, you look at the word authority. Author is the first word in that, right? So it's a really important thing. Now, the next thing about being an author is that it puts you in the world of intellectual property. So the keys to the castle of going into the cloud world is this thing called intellectual property. Intellectual property is know-how. It's your stories, your examples, your case studies. It's your ability to unlock valuable ideas that could be transmuted to anyone, anywhere in the planet. And the way that you do that is by publishing stuff. If you write a book, you are suddenly in some way you just get transported straight to the cloud world. You know, we talked about picking up a gun. The book is like the first gun. It's a gun. It puts you straight in there because you're on Amazon. People can access it. You can put it in the post, and anyone anywhere can get a copy of the book. One of the easiest ways to make $100,000 a year or more is write a book, print 500 copies, and give 500 copies away. And as if by magic, you'll make $100,000 or more a year. Like, it's almost impossible not to.
With things like books and free content in general, do you think there are some things you should ever hold back, or you should literally just give everything in the kitchen sink as much value as possible in the book, like trade secrets and everything?
Well, trade secret, all of that's great. Here's my test for a book. Imagine you went to a restaurant and they said, here's the menu. Have a look at what you might want to order. By the way, while you're looking at the menu, here's a massive pizza that you can just have some pizza while you're looking at the menu. So now you're eating the pizza, and then he comes back and says, what would you like to order? And you go, don't want to order anything. Why? I'm not hungry anymore.
That's a good analogy.
Right? So what we want with a book is we want a book that turns the hunger up, that it makes you want something more. So let's take my book, Key Person of Influence. So it says the 5-step method to become one of the most highly valued and highly paid people in your industry. So immediately you go, okay, I wouldn't mind being that. So all through the book, it's telling you stories of becoming highly valued and highly paid. It's telling you a bit about how to do it. It's telling you that there's definitely a path to follow. It gives you a lot in the book, but it's almost like it makes you go, this has just opened me up to a whole world I didn't know existed. I want more. And the purpose of a good book is it's just like I finish reading it and it's like, okay, I need to get in touch with this author and I need to go deep on this. This is awesome. So it's a really fine balance. You're looking for a book that delivers great value where people want to even read it again and they want to recommend it to their friends, but it also is leading you towards this heightened desire for what it is that you do. So Fitness for Farmers should be the story of farmers who transform their lives through fitness. It should be what's possible. It should be the principles, but it shouldn't make people go, oh, I've got that now. I don't need to worry about it. It should be heightening the desire. I created this software with my team called bookmagic.ai. And bookmagic.ai, you tell it your idea of and who you are and what your thing is, and then it spits out a reader avatar, and then the reader avatar tells you all the questions that they've got, and then it structures that into all the chapters, and then you just simply answer the questions and it builds it into a book. So the AI just guides you through creating a book. So we put a lot of thought into how do you create desire through a book so that the reader ends up with heightened desire.
The other type of written content that is very valuable is email. Do you think that with obviously books is something that's in growing influence?
One of the things that's great about a book is that everything else carries more weight. So getting an email from an author is more important than getting an email from a non-author. Reading a post or following an Instagram account from an author tends to carry more weight. So it's like there's this weight that gets added to everything you do. So it's really, really great that you are people know that you're valuable, and now they'll place more value on everything else. So that's the two go hand in hand. So you can create valuable chapters and release them as emails and then release the book. Or you can release the book and then take little bits from the book and explore it in smaller emails, and then that accentuates the book. So I think the two go really nicely together.
Cool, love that. In terms of the ScoreApp,
have you got a book?
No, the reason I asked this question is it's been on the list for like 18 months, and I'm like,
should you do it?
Kicking the can down the road.
Well, you should definitely get bookmagic.ai.
That's why I was writing it down.
Yeah, it's good fun. It actually makes it. Your book will be twice as good and written twice as fast. And if you get stuck, you should definitely get help. Especially you should get help because the impact of having the book will be transformational for you.
It's something I've definitely need to do, but I just need to start.
I'll tell you one thing it'll do that'll surprise you is it'll massively level up the culture of your team. So the 30 people who are on your team, 32 people on your team, you give each of them a signed copy of the book. They will become that extra bit galvanized to the business, loyal to the business, and they will understand the culture of you and your business at a deeper level. Just even if they don't read the book, something happens when they get the book. Even if they skim the book, there's just a magical transference of culture that happens around the book. So your 32 people just suddenly become that little bit more loyal. How many customers do you reckon you've got?
In our trainers business, we have around 300.
So print 600 copies, give every customer a book and a one for their friend, and watch what happens. Okay. Or send them all 3 copies. Right? Print 1,000 copies. This is one for you and one for 2 friends. Boom. Next year your business doubles. Now what would be the cost of 1,000 books? About £4 a book. So for £4,000, right, for $5 a book, $5,000 plus call it mailing costs of another $5,000. So imagine a $10,000 campaign that takes every single one of your customers and gives them a tool that they can go recruit 2 more customers.
That's high leverage.
It's high leverage, right? Mm. So yeah, that like if we can get you a great book that heightens desire and that we can send out 1,000 copies, you watch, just as if by magic, you'll like double the business.
Yeah, I just need to execute it. It's been on the list for 6 to 12 months and it's keeps getting kicked down, but I think it's just starting.
I'll give you an amazing book, Book Magic and a book coach, and you'll have an amazing book. Yeah.
Appreciate that. One of your businesses, ScoreApp, was one of the things I'd be interested in hearing more about. What's the future and plans with developing that? How can it help people?
So ScoreApp is, we've just won a major award. We've been added to a list of the 50 fastest growing companies in London. So we're a super fast growth company. We just did a great acquisition. We bought an American company, actually. Yeah. And that the company we bought has been on the fast growth Inc. 5000 list 3 times in a row. New York Times bestselling author started it.
Author thing again, right?
Yeah. we're really proud to have bought that company, and that's added significantly to our growth. So ScoreApp is a business that allows you to create an online assessment that people fill in so that you get highly qualified warm leads. So have you ever done a personality test or like 16 personalities or have you ever done like love languages?
I've read the book, The 5 Love Languages.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the book, 5 Love Languages, it says go to our website, answer 12 questions.
I think I've done that as well, yeah.
Yeah, and we'll tell you which love language you are. So that is a winning combination. So this book, Key Person of Influence, on one of the pages, it says the next thing I want you to do is I want you to go and fill in the online scorecard of Key Person of Influence scorecard. We had 90,000 people do that, and it brought in 20 million plus. Here we go. So it says, Key Person of Influence quiz. What gets measured gets improved. We've devised a measurement tool so you can focus on areas that need the most improvement. Before you read on, take the Key Person of Influence scorecard at this URL. This set of questions is designed to score you on 5 areas of influence described in the book, and it gives you a customized report based on your answers. So we had 90,000 people fill that in and do the Key Person of Influence scorecard. 20 million worth of sales came through.
Directly from the book?
Directly from the quiz.
That's wild.
So ScoreApp is the ability to set up those quizzes. So fitness for farmers, because we're playing with it. So the fitness for farmers, the Fit Farmer scorecard. Answer 15 questions and we will tell you whether you are on track to be fitter, more healthy, and a better example to your family in the year ahead, or whether you need help and support on that. So then the farmer goes on, answers some questions on their phone or on their iPad. It says, is fitness a major priority for you each day? Do you have a fitness plan? Do you have someone who holds you accountable? Do you measure your calories every day? Do you eat organic, natural ingredients, blah, blah, blah. So you go through and they answer questions and it's like, I got a 25%. Actually, I've got 75% room for improvement. So I need to improve this. It's like, well, key thing is you said you had no one holding you accountable. You need an accountability coach. You said that you had no one who understands the pressure that you're under as a farmer and as a family man. So you need someone who understands you and can build a plan for you. So it's like, based on your questions, these are the answers that you need. It's so powerful for making people realize the exact next step they need to take. So ScoreApp allows you to just use templates to set this up. Takes 20 minutes to customize. 20 minutes if you add your logo and your colors and all of that sort of stuff. And people love filling these in. Love filling, especially fitness ones. One of the most popular ones is called the Wheel of Life assessment. Have you ever seen one of those? No. So it takes 7 areas of life and you answer a bunch of questions. It tells you which area of life needs the most work. So all of these online assessments that people take, and then it gives you the warm leads. You pick up the phone and say, hey, you took an assessment. Can we talk about your results? And people are basically selling themselves at that point. So super, super powerful. Or you can do it with a client. You can do it and then have an email sequence that goes out and markets to people after they've taken the quiz based on how they did the results. So ScoreApp is super, super powerful. If you want, I'll get my team to build you one and you can test it.
Yeah, I think there'd be a lot of legs for that.
Yeah. It'd be great. And we'll. What's the main concept? It's
7-figure scaling system.
So are you ready to hit 7 figures? So is your system taking you to 7 figures? Answer 15 questions to find out whether you're on track to hit a 7-figure. Will you hit 7 figures in the next 20 months? Answer these 15 questions to find out whether you are on track to hit 7 figures in the next 20 months or less.
Yeah, I think that's gold.
Yeah.
Because I think that's also where people need problem awareness. Mm-hmm. It's like they have the goal of what they want, but they don't know necessarily why they're not there yet and what the problem is.
Yeah. And they might be focusing on something that they're already strong at. So they might be already creating amazing content and it's like, I just need to keep going. It's like, no, actually, you don't have the right product. That content will not work without the product. And they're like, I hadn't even thought about the product. You don't have a scalable product. God, it hadn't even entered my awareness. Now it's like, okay, you've moved their focus to, as you say, problem awareness. Boom, that's the problem that needs solving. And they might have thought of you as the content guy. And they go, oh, I don't need what you offer. So, hey, that's only part of what we offer. We offer building a scalable product as well. So we can help you with the thing that you need help with. And then boom, the sale.
That's smart. Over the next 12 months, what would be the best piece of advice you could give anyone who's looking to grow their business, who's maybe in a stage they're plateauing? Is the last question.
We expand to the level of complexity that we know how to manage. So if you've hit a plateau, it means that you are at the upper limit of what you know how to do. Now the world is reflecting that back to you, but you'll just you won't get it. You need to objectively say, if I feel like I've hit a plateau, it's because this is as good as I know how to do it. So you need a mentor. You need a group of people around you. The number one principle is environment dictates performance. Environment is almost everything. I'll tell you something embarrassing about me. I pathologically cannot do a workout in the gym without a trainer. So if you put me in the gym, I will check my phone, I will do other things, I'll be watching stuff. I'll cut my workout down to 20 or 30 minutes of meh. And then I'll say, oh, well, I went to the gym. It's only when I have a trainer that I do really amazing hour workouts, and I have to book it 3 times a week. That is just how I'm built, how I'm wired. My brain is working too fast for me to be able to stay focused on my physical environment around me without someone pushing me to do it. So I have to know this about myself, that I'm not capable of managing this on my own. I need a trainer. I need a gym. I need a trainer. I need to be booked in. I have to have my executive assistant put it in my diary, and it's booked. And it's a meeting in the diary. That's the only way I can function. I've tried all the other self-improvement ways. I can't do it on my own. I need this trainer. Because I know that about myself, I'm getting better results every week, right? I'm really enjoying the process. I've accepted that that's just how I'm built. When you hit an upper limit with your business, you have to say, you know what? I need a trainer, I need a mentor, I need a group, a community around me, I need someone to help guide me through this, I need to commit to something. So I need the support structures, or else I'm not going to get where I want to go. We are living through the most incredible time where anything's possible. You can live a really big life. Unlike, had you been born at any other time in history, life would have been very set in concrete. If you were born in a certain place, you would die in that place. You'd live and die, and there would be 5 careers available to you, and there were no choices. Today, you could be living anywhere in the world. You could be doing all sorts of things. You could be making a big impact. You could be taking on a charity, starting a foundation. There's so much that you can be doing today. But you need to be around a group of people where that's normal, it's normalized. So that would be definitely the overarching, rather than anything tactical, the overarching thing is a commitment to dramatically change your environment.
I couldn't agree any more on that, because that's personally the thing that's completely transformed my life, has been mentorship and people coaching me. So big thank you for your time today.
It's been great.
Where's the best place for people to find out more about you, the book, ScoreApp?
So on Amazon, you've got Key Person of Influence. Oversubscribed is a good one. 24 Assets is another book that I've written. If you're a parent, How to Raise Entrepreneurial Kids, I've written those books. So you'll see there's a Daniel Priestley book section in Amazon. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I post a lot of content on LinkedIn. Do a little Daniel Priestley search on YouTube, and you'll see some of the other bits of content that I'm out there with. So yeah, run down the rabbit hole. And I'd love to connect. Hopefully we get a chance to connect in the real world.
Awesome. Big thank you for your time. Everyone who loved the podcast, make sure you smash the like button. Comment below any questions, make sure you subscribe. And if you're looking to scale your online fitness business, hit the link below this video and you can find out exactly how we can help you. We book in a free call, audit your business with intention of helping you to grow that to get to the next level of ideally 7 figures per year. So big thank you, Daniel.
Brilliant.
That's awesome. Thank you.